This video is an audio recording of our reading group, reading and discussing on the correct handling of contradictions among the people, Chapter 3, the question of the cooperative transformation of agriculture. Our reading groups are open to the public, and we encourage discussion of any ideas people bring to the table, but this also means some of the ideas expressed in this discussion might not reflect the actual views of our party on any level. With that said, we hope you enjoy our reading and discussion of Chapter 3, the question of the cooperative transformation of agriculture.
Do we have a volunteer to read first?
I can read. We have a rural population of over 500 million, so how our peasants fare has a most important bearing on the development of our economy and the consolidation of our state power. In my view, the situation is basically sound. The cooperative transformation of agriculture has been successfully accomplished, and this has resolved the great contradiction in our country between socialist industrialization and the individual peasant economy. As the cooperative transformation of agriculture was completed so rapidly, some people were worried and wondered whether something untoward might occur. There are indeed some faults, but fortunately they are not serious, and on the whole, the movement is healthy. The peasants are working with a will, and last year there was an increase in the country's grain output despite the worst floods, droughts, and gales in years. Now there are people who are stirring up a miniature typhoon. They are saying that cooperation is no good, that there is nothing superior about it. Is cooperation superior or not? Among the documents distributed at today's meeting, there is one about the Wang Kufan Cooperative in Sunhua County, Hebei Province, which I suggest you read. This cooperative is situated in a hilly region, which was very poor in the past, and which for a number of years depended on relief grain from the people's government. When the cooperative was first set up in 1953, people called it the Paupers Co-op. But it has become better off year by year, and now, after 4 years of hard struggle, most of its households have reserves of grain. What was possible for this cooperative should also be possible for others to achieve under normal conditions in the same length of time or a little longer. Clearly, there are no grounds for saying that something has gone wrong with agricultural cooperation. It is also clear that it takes hard struggle to build cooperatives. New things always have to experience difficulties and setbacks as they grow. It is sheer fantasy to imagine that the cause of socialism is all plain sailing and easy success, with no difficulties and setbacks, or without the exertion of tremendous efforts. Who are the active supporters of the cooperatives? The overwhelming majority of the poor and lower middle peasants, who constitute more than 70% of the rural population. Most of the other peasants are also placing their hopes on the cooperatives. Only a very small minority are really dissatisfied. Quite a number of persons have failed to analyze the situation and to make an overall examination of the achievements and shortcomings of the cooperatives and the causes of these shortcomings. Instead, they've taken part of the picture or one side of the matter for the whole, and consequently, a miniature typhoon has been stirred up among some people who are saying that the cooperatives are not superior. How long will it take to consolidate the cooperatives and for this talk about their not being superior to wind up? Judging from the experience of the growth of many cooperatives, it will probably take 5 years or a little longer. As most of our cooperatives are only a little over a year old, it would be unreasonable to ask too much of them. In my view, we will be doing well enough if the cooperatives can be consolidated during the second 5-year plan after being established in the first. The cooperatives are now in the process of gradual consolidation. There are certain contradictions that remain to be resolved, such as those between the state and the cooperatives, and those in and between the cooperatives themselves. To resolve these contradictions, we must pay constant attention to the problems of production and distribution. On the question of production, the cooperative economy must be subject to the unified economic planning of the state, while retaining a certain flexibility and independence that do not run counter to the state's unified plan or its policies, laws, and regulations.
At the same time, every household in a cooperative must comply with the overall plan of the cooperative or production team to which it belongs, though it may make its own appropriate plans in regard to land allotted for personal needs and other individually operated economic undertakings.
On the question of distribution, we must take the interests of the state, the collective, and the individual into account. We must properly handle the three-way relationship between the state agricultural tax, the cooperative's accumulation fund, and the peasant's personal income, and take constant care to make readjustments so as to resolve contradictions between them. Accumulation is essential for both the state and the cooperative, but in neither case should it be excessive. We should do everything possible to enable the peasants in normal years to raise their personal incomes annually through increased production. Many people say that the peasants lead a hard life. Is this true? In one sense, it is. That is to say, because the imperialists and their agents oppressed and exploited us for over a century, ours is an impoverished country, and the standard of living not only of our peasants, but of our workers and intellectuals is still low. We will need several decades of strenuous effort gradually to raise the standard of living of our people as a whole. In this context, it is right to say that the peasants lead a hard life. But in another sense, it is not true. We refer to the allegation that in the 7 years since liberation, it is only the life of the workers that has been improved, and not that of the peasants. As a matter of fact, with very few exceptions, there has been some improvement in the life of both the peasants and the workers. Since liberation, the peasants have been free from landlord exploitation, and their production has increased annually. Take grain crops. In 1949, the country's output was only something over 210,000 million caddies. By 1956, it had risen to more than 360,000 million caddies, an increase of nearly 150 million caddies. The state agricultural tax is not heavy, only amounting to something over 30,000 million caddies a year. State purchases of grain from the peasants at standard prices only amount to a little over 50,000 million caddies a year. These two items together total over 80,000 million caddies. Furthermore, more than half this grain is sold back to the villages and nearby towns. Obviously, no one can say that there has been no improvement in the life of the peasants. In order to help agriculture to develop and the cooperatives to become consolidated, we are planning to stabilize the total amount of the grain tax plus the grain purchased by the state at somewhat more than 80,000 million caddies within a few years. In this way, the small number of grain-deficient households still found in the countryside will stop being short. All peasant households, except some raising industrial crops, will either have grain reserves or at least become self-sufficient. There will no longer be poor peasants in the countryside, and the standard of living of the entire peasantry will reach or surpass the middle peasant's level. It is not right simply to compare a peasant's average annual income with a worker's and jump to the conclusion that one is too low and the other too high. Since the labor productivity of the workers is much higher than that of the peasants, and the latter's cost of living is much lower than that of the workers in the cities, the workers cannot be said to have received special favors from the state. The wages of a small number of workers and some state personnel are in fact a little too high. The peasants have reason to be dissatisfied with this, and it is necessary to make certain appropriate adjustments according to specific circumstances.
Thank you very much. First question I had here is, how does one analyze the economic contradictions that arise in the development of a socialist economy?
Dialectical materialism.
Yes. Go around and ask people how they're doing. Yes, that is also very good.
I think also analyzing mistakes, there's the section where he says, I don't know, I can't find it, but he says something along the lines of, oh, here it is. New things always have to experience difficulties and setbacks as they grow. It is sheer fantasy to imagine that the cause of socialism is all plain sailing and easy success, with no difficulties and setbacks, or without the exertion of tremendous efforts.
Mhm.
So, excuse me, recognizing mistakes and being willing to tweak things in order to correct for those mistakes.
Mhm. What about specifically the economic contradictions? and specifically in the development of a socialist economy? How do we determine what they are and how to resolve them? I think what Lily said about going around and asking people is good, and it does definitely help this. I didn't put it in my own answer to this, but it will definitely be invaluable to carrying this out.
You have to gauge where people are at.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say make sure you have good records
for
and
sure.
good data to analyze.
What I said was that one must examine the various classes that exist and their conditions and immediate interests, compare them with each other, and compare each to the long-term interests of society as a whole, represented by the state. Which is kind of what Mao did do when he was talking about the, especially when he was talking about the contradictions that exist between agricultural cooperatives and the state, and the agricultural cooperatives and the individual members of the cooperative, and so on and stuff.
You mentioned some friction between the peasants and the workers.
And when we apply this to our own situation, it means that we need to be very much aware of what the classes are that exist in their specific circumstances. Anything else to add on this discussion question?
I was gonna say too, it sounds like they were, like the peasants would complain about the workers maybe, or at least the peasants feeling like the workers were getting, like urban workers were getting a preferential treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and they make more money and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that it sounds like the party was just then actually addressing those concerns and talking to people about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think just explaining things to people
Yes,
would alleviate a lot of problems.
for sure. All right, next question. What are the contradictions Mao points out here that arose between the peasants/cooperatives and the proletariat, and between the peasant cooperatives and the state? How are each handled? So between the peasants cooperatives and the proletariat, and between the peasants cooperatives and the state.
I mean, I just kind of brought that up.
Yeah, you did.
Feeling that one group is getting preferential treatment over another.
Mm-hmm.
So he mentions that the way that these are handled is, you need the plan, you need the overall plan for the economy, but you grant as much autonomy as possible while still maintaining the integrity of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows the different groups and regions and towns and whatever to adapt the plan to their specific circumstances. And that kind of like eases the tension of the contradictions and still maintains everyone pushing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. What about the very specific circumstances that Mao was handling? This is a more from the chapter question.
So Mao says we must properly handle the three-way relationship between the state agricultural tax, the cooperative's accumulation fund, and the peasant's personal income. And take constant care to make readjustments so as to resolve contradictions between them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so of course you need like that accumulation for, I don't know, the rainy day fund,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. But then also you can't be taking so much that individuals are getting hurt or
Right.
becoming resentful.
Yep. So that was the contradiction between the interests of the state, cooperatives, and individuals in regards to distribution. And you just read the passage there that explains what he was saying to resolve that. And then you also mentioned earlier the contradiction between the lower wages but low cost of living of peasants and the higher wages but high cost of living of workers and officials. And that is a non-antagonistic contradiction between the peasants and the workers and officials. Developing the productive forces will in time resolve this. However, it is true that some of the wages of some workers and officials are unfairly high, and this must be corrected. I think something to point out here is you mentioned during the last question that we need to be going out and talking to people and getting to know like what their circumstances are. That's like the thing to do to figure out exactly how to adjust the taxes and the accumulation fund and the peasant's personal income. Figure out where each is standing, and if you need to make adjustments, make them.
Right.
And this could also change from region to region as well, depending on the specific circumstances of each region. Anything else on this discussion question? All right,
No.
final thoughts on this section?
It's a pretty straightforward section.
Yeah.
so.
Regarding the talking about like 210,000 million caddies, that's just that's
It's a Chinese
because
thing.
the way that Chinese does numbers.
I think it's an East Asian thing in general. Like I think Japanese has that as well.
Mm,
They're splitting up numbers differently.
yeah.
Although I did have to look up what caddies are. It's just a unit of apparently weighing food. or
Oh, yeah.
crops or something.
Yeah. I did look that up before, but I forgot exactly
I don't know what the exact.
how much a caddy is.
Yeah,
Oh, and in Chinese it's Jin.
yeah,
Caddy comes from Malay.
yeah. Okay, it
But
looks like
it's about it's about
1 1/3
half a
pounds.
kilogram.
Yeah, or 1 1/3 pounds. Like, at least that's historically. Historically, it's 1 1/3 pounds.
It's half a kilogram.
Well, no, now I think China has standardized it. So
Yeah.
in China, it's 500 grams.
Yeah. I don't know when that was though. I don't know if that was before or after Mao was writing this.
Yeah, I have no clue.
But I mean, it's not that much different.
No.
Thank you for watching this recording of our reading group, and thank you to everyone that attended. We hope you got something out of this. We apologize that this video is being released a bit later than we expected. Our members have been very busy with our other activities, and we've had to prioritize those other activities over editing these videos. However, we plan on getting all 4 of the chapters that we covered in last Tuesday's reading group edited and released by this weekend, so you can catch up before the next reading group on the 28th. If you enjoyed this video and want to attend a reading group live, feel free to reach out to us via email at milwaukee@cpusa.org. DM us on any of our social media, or just come say hi to us in an event that we're at. Our reading groups are hybrid meetings with both in-person and virtual options, and we'd love to see more of the community attend in whatever form they can. Solidarity, everyone, and see you next time with Chapter 4, The Question of the Industrialist and the Businessman.